On today's show, what does the CHL NCAA agreement mean exactly for prospects? And did Juraj Slafkovsky just call out Slovak hockey? We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hadi, QMJHL and crossover scout for elite prospects, with Sebastian, USHL and crossover scout for elite prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down, first and foremost in the first segment, the CHL NCAA agreement. What does it really mean for prospects? What does it equate to in terms of the pathways that prospects are going to take? In the second segment, we'll kind of expand on that with a little bit of a head-to-head between an NCAA prospect in Gabe Perreault and a CHL prospect in Quentin Musty. And we'll compare the two in terms of stylistic differences and which one we like more. So we'll debate that in the second segment. And then in the third segment, we'll talk about Juraj Slafkovsky's recent quote-unquote drama about what's going on around Slovak hockey. He explicitly called out Slovak hockey for a couple things. We'll expand on that in the final segment, so make sure to stick around up until the end. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins, so visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode, and if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's get started right away with the CHL NCAA agreement. For those who don't know, what are the big lines of what's going on here between the CHL and the NCAA?
So basically there was a lawsuit earlier this year against the NCAA that prompted a bit of a shift in, practice of player recruitment. And there's going to be a vote in November about whether or not CHL players are going to be allowed to just openly commit to NCAA teams. So that'll be players that are actively playing in the CHL that will be able to commit to play in college hockey, and also just ex-CHL players once they've graduated from the CHL, of the NCAA being a route that they can take rather than going to Europe for professional hockey or going the U Sports route while staying in Canada. So it's a pretty big change in terms of player movement, because the NCAA has been really like the big stalwart in terms of excluding players for certain reasons, whether it be having signed a pro contract, which will remain the case. That is not changing at all. If a player has already signed their pro deal, they cannot commit to the NCAA. But if they have yet to do so, they will be able to make that commitment if the vote gets passed. And we've already seen a couple players very quietly commit to the NCAA despite still playing in the CHL today. Maddox Marmalak from the QMJHL with Acadie Bathurst was one of the first ones to do so. He's a forward. Has not signed any ELC. He's not been drafted. And he's very quietly added into his Instagram bio that he's both in NCAA commit as well as a current CHL player. So things are currently starting to shift, but of course the vote only happens in about a month's time. So that's when things will become official, but it's really looking like this is going to happen.
For sure, and the opposite is true as well. We have a couple of USHL prospects who are moving to the CHL in order to pursue their careers. I'm thinking of Jet Lajoie, who was one of the top USHL prospects. Well, I mean, you could say that he's a pretty decent USHL prospect. He's moved on to, I want to say, the St. John Sea Dogs in the QMJHL. So there's the opposite going on as well, where prospects who initially were kind of constrained to going through the USHL in order to pursue a collegiate hockey career are now being offered the opportunity to move on to move over to the CHL to pursue their careers. So I think this will have a lot of consequences on the shift in the hockey prospect sphere. The primary thing for me is the junior A to USHL to NCAA route 100%. Is going to slowly but surely dissipate, which will lead to two things. I think first and foremost, it'll lead to a drop in USHL talent. And second of all, it'll lead to a drop, especially in BCHL, AJHL talent. I think those leagues are going to be the most affected by this. What do you think about that, though?
I fully agree. I think that the BCHL and the AJHL especially are going to see really big drops in quality of players, especially among quality of players that are in their draft year seasons or draft plus ones or right around that like 17, 18 year age range. Like you might still see a couple like overagers, like 20-year-olds that still go that route eventually, but you're going to see a lot of like, I mean, recently we've seen so many high profile players come out of those leagues because they've been wanting to go to the NCAA, whether it was Bradley Nadeau a year ago, or if you go back 6 or 7 years, you had Cale Makar, of course, as well with the Brooks Bandits in the AJHL. If this agreement goes through, those players that are Canadian and don't want to go the USHL route, but they really want to go to the NCAA to pursue further development, they're not going to be going to the AJHL or BCHL anymore. The CHL will be far, far more alluring in terms of basically everything, whether it be quality of competition. I mean, just like the scale of teams, right? Like it's way bigger arenas with a lot more fanfare in those leagues. Also just being more platformed and not having a big asterisk next to every scouting take that is put out there on your name of, well, it happened in the BCHL because the quality of competition isn't the highest. That will not be the case for these players in the CHL if this agreement is made. So a very, very big change in terms of how prospects are going to be able to steer their own development as well. So they'll be able to, like, you're going to see a lot of prospects really take control of their own agency and just go, okay, I'm going to the CHL first and then NCAA after, which also means you're going to see a lot more CHL prospects that are perhaps not going to sign their ELCs as soon as they could. Whereas typically, if you're a CHL prospect and the team that drafts you offers you an ELC, you're signing that immediately. You're taking your bonus. You're happy that you have it locked down and loaded. But now that will close off the NCAA route for you, you might see a lot more prospects kind of not want to do that, which also means that you could have CHL drafted prospects that end up not signing with the team that drafts them, which is also an interesting development.
For sure. I'm thinking also of kind of the Cutter Gauthier, Rutger McGroarty route of just kind of controlling where you end up. I think that's going to be even more likely.
Precisely.
I think this will remove the safety that teams have when they pick CHL prospects of, you know, if he doesn't want to sign with us, he has to re-go through the draft and risk the chance of being picked up by another team he doesn't want to be with by going the NCAA route. That's kind of canceling out that risk as well. And kind of just adding a layer of that issue, right? But on top of that, I'm also thinking of, you know, we've seen a lot of recent Canadian prospects go the USHL to NCAA route. Macklin Celebrini, Michael Hage, Sacha Boisvert, the list goes on and on and on. And I'm thinking of those high-profile first-rounders who ended up in the USHL just being less and less likely to go that route. I mean, there isn't as much of an advantage to play in the USHL versus the CHL. You'd rather be close to home. You'd rather be on your side of the border and then be able to make the jump when you're ready, rather than being forced to play for a team like Muskegon or Green Bay or you know, Sioux City. As much as those teams are good, the CHL programs have a long track record, first hiring great development coaches, and second of all putting them in positions, putting their players in positions where they can develop on the skills that they need. And we haven't seen that as much, except for maybe the Chicago Steel and obviously the NTDP. There aren't a lot of examples of high-end programs in the USHL who consistently churn out high-end NHL prospects. So I think that first rounders overall, and even high profile ones like the likes of Macklin Celebrini and those types of guys, even Adam Valentini is in that position right now in the USHL, right? So there's a lot of positions, lots of ways that's going to affect things. But I like the point that you brought up about the ELCs. I do want to expand on that because right now in the CHL, there are a ton of signed ELCs. And, you know, that number could drastically drop, right?
Absolutely. And on the flip side of the, well, player can like take control of their own like their own route and like force a trade in the NHL. The flip side of that is that the big drawback currently of drafting out of the CHL is that the player's only under team control for like 2 or 3 years typically. So it's not much time at all to have to make a decision of whether or not to invest one of your 50 contract slots on this player. However, now with the NCAA thing, if that agreement is made, you're going to see CHL players have almost significantly longer evens potentially than players that are from like the NTDP in terms of team control, because they'll have potentially 2 or 3 like D plus post draft year seasons in the CHL, and then be able to go to the NCAA, which also means that a lot of those like maybe 5th, 6th, 7th round draft picks that just get like cannoned into free agency because it's just difficult to invest a contract slot after a couple seasons after drafting them, and they just haven't developed that quickly. Being able to go to the NCAA route after that and still be under team control, I think is a really positive thing as well for both team and player.
Absolutely. And that wraps things up for our first segment. We'll get into our second segment here where we expand on that CHL NCAA conversation with a debate between a CHL prospect and an NCAA prospect. We'll discuss Gabe Perreault versus Quentin Musty in just a second, but just before, a quick word from our sponsors at PrizePicks.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are safe, fast, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long with PrizePicks. I know I love PrizePicks because I can take my swings on the players that I really think are going to do well in any given week. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment here, we'll be talking about a couple of prospects that are quite comparable in terms of overall risk-reward issues, right? Gabe Perreault versus Quentin Musty. We'll do this head-to-head real quick. I'll take the position of defending Quentin Musty because he's awesome, and Sebastian will be taking over the Gabe Perreault conversation there, and we'll kind of debate these two, how they've been performing so far, what their outlooks look like, even their fit within the how they fit in within the team structure and where they could play down the line. Let's start with Gabe Perreault's side. Talk me through his point totals last year, because it was absolutely ridiculous what he was able to put up with Boston College in the NCAA, right?
It really was. I mean, 19 goals and 60 points in 36 games as a college freshman is just obscene. And that was a tremendous line that he continued to play on last year with Will Smith and Ryan Leonard. But Gabe Perreault was drafted 23rd overall in 2023, which I believe was a couple spots ahead of Quentin Musty by the New York Rangers. And he's an undersized forward who's not a fantastic skater. He's a 5'11", 165-pound left shooting right wing. And he is one of the smartest players outside the NHL today. He is a genius with the puck on a stick, a fantastic playmaker. He's able to set the pace like few other players in college hockey are able to. And this is a guy whose goal scoring, I think, is really undervalued. He lacks like elite level goal scoring mechanics, but his off puck movement is so elite in the offensive zone. He's constantly not just finding soft ice, but creating pockets of space for himself. He lives in between checks, and with a puck on the stick as well, the handling ability and the playmaking are both slam dunk elite. There's a lot to like with this player. I think the Rangers got an absolute steal here at 23rd overall, and he's always been doubted whenever he's had to make a big jump in competition. I know that we had our own fair share of questions as well in this draft year, but the NCAA leap was beyond comfortable for him. And I think that once he makes the leap to the AHL and subsequently the NHL, that he's going to keep scoring and keep playing highly intelligent hockey. And while he's not a plus level defensive piece or a plus level skater or a plus level physical player, I really do see this as a potential top 6 guy for the New York Rangers long term, especially if you pair him with a veteran like a Chris Kreider. I think he will do fantastically.
For sure. I think on the flip side of that, though, Quentin Musty is absolutely awesome and deserves his laurels in this conversation. We're talking about a 6'2", 200-pound winger winger slash center, but he's mainly playing wing. For the Sudbury Wolves in the OHL. He's been absolutely fantastic. 105 points in 53 games last year. 102 points in 53 games last year. An absolutely ridiculous tally from Musty, who I believe started the season with a bit of an injury and then joined all the late. And then by the end of the year, he had the highest point per game total in the OHL. There is absolutely ridiculous talent when we're talking about Quentin Musty. The hands are insane. The passing is really good. The shot is ridiculous. The hockey sense has improved so much since his draft year in terms of his offensive processing, the decisions he takes, that he takes in the offensive zone, the off-puck movement. There's just so much to work with Quentin Musty. I believe, personally, I think he has a very, very similar skill set to Gabe Perreault in terms of offensive output and abilities, but he has it in a 6'2", 200-pound frame, which he uses liberally as well. He's not afraid of physical contact. He goes into the corners and digs out pucks and drives the net and stays at the net front and all the details you want from a bigger forward. I think he's better than Gabe Perreault. I don't think it's really complicated on that end. And it's so strange because we're talking about a prospect that was picked at 23rd overall in the 2023 NHL draft in Gabe Perreault, who's already looking like a steal. And we're talking about a prospect here in Quentin Musty, who was picked at 26th overall in the 2023 NHL draft.
And is also a steal.
And is also a ridiculous steal. The only thing I think Gabe Perreault has going for him right now is attitude. Quentin Musty
and
right
smart.
now. Well,
yeah, easy by a country mile on that one. I mean, certainly Quentin Musty has the advantage in physical tools, and I mean, I'm going to be the first one to say that I love Quentin Musty. I think I might like him even more than you do. I'm quite enthusiastic about both these players at this stage in their development, but with Gabe Perreault, what you're getting is the intelligence, and I think that with Gabe Perreault, you have more separating abilities than with Quentin Musty. I think the intelligence, the puck handling, and the playmaking are all like, even if he's playing top 6 NHL minutes, that's something that separates him from that pack. Whereas with Quentin Musty, yes, you have elite level tools, certainly. Like I love the tools with Quentin Musty just as you do, but I think with Gabe Perreault, it's perhaps a little bit more cohesive, even if he does lack that physicality, because he is so slippery under pressure, and he's gotten a lot better at resisting contact and playing through contact in college hockey.
Yeah, I would still say that Musty's separating skill is the habits, the decision making, the reads. I think that with Perreault, it's all about like really good awareness, really good vision. But when it comes to the habits, the small details in terms of where he goes in the offensive zone, that kind of stuff, he's a lot less peripheral than Gabe Perreault for me. Much more inside driven, a lot more willing to drive the net, drop the shoulder, do the details that you want from a center, support your defenseman down low, help them on the breakout, that kind of stuff. Perreault relies a lot on the center on his line to drive those results in terms of assisting in transition, right? Like he's a really, really smart player at playing off. He's a really good complementary player to a play driving center. But Quentin Musty is the play driver on his line wherever he goes. And that's very, very clear with the Sudbury Wolves. I think with the CHL NCAA agreement, I'd be curious to see if Musty's one of those guys who moves over. I don't think he's signed. Has he? Damn, that's a shame, because he would be very interesting to watch him.
He'd be very fun, but he is forcing a trade at the moment from the Sudbury Wolves in the OHL. So we're going to see where Quentin Musty lands now that he has requested that trade and is not reporting to Sudbury. And we'll see what kind of line mates potentially he's going to get this season, wherever he does end up. And I think there's multiple fun possibilities, whether it be the London Knights or the Saginaw Spirit. There's a lot of very, very strong OHL teams that he could end up on. For instance, like which CHL or which OHL player or centerman specifically do you think would complement Quentin Musty the very best as a potential trade destination?
That's an interesting question. If I'm thinking
It
of
has to be
OHL
Michael Misa, right?
I mean, for sure. If we're talking about the Saginaw Spirit overall are a wagon. I don't even think they would need Quentin Musty, but if they can afford him, if they have the picks and the prospects that they can send back Sudbury's way in order to make that happen, that would be great. It's just a shame because I look at I look at the likes of David Goyette and Dalibor Dvorsky and those kinds of guys as like they were really good fits for Musty last year. They're gone, right? Like they're not with the Sudbury Wolves anymore. And I understand his desire to leave there because the best center they have right now is what, Coach Adelitz? It's not a very deep team that they have right now. Yeah, like it's not a very deep team that they have right now in Sudbury. So if you're looking at a move, the Saginaw Spirit would be absolutely absurd. Other than that, I think it'd do really great in Mississauga, in Brampton rather, with the likes of Porter Martone and Luke Misa and that kind of bunch. But yeah, there's a bunch of different directions you can go with this. I think at the end of the day, the Barrie Colts, the Sudbury Wolves aren't going to be very interested in trading him, but otherwise you're just wasting a roster spot. Yeah, they're just wasting a roster spot on a player.
He's not reporting to camp. He's still at home in the States, right? So
yeah,
they're gonna have to move him. But if he does get dealt to Saginaw, which is not based on any rumor that I've heard, it is purely just fun
factor. Yeah.
It would be really entertaining as well because and then the two players in this segment would be playing with two contending first overall centermen this season with James Higgins at Boston College alongside Gabe Perreault and hopefully James Higgins will get bumped up to that first line. He started off the season on the second line.
With Hadi Stiga, of all people, by the way, which is...
I mean, hey, it's a great connection. You don't want to mess with what's been successful already, but I do think that like Gabe Perreault could play the Teddy Stiga role pretty nicely.
Yeah, he's just, for me, he's a better Teddy Stiga, just a better version of him. But anyway, that's our second segment done. We'll get into our third segment here where we talk about some Juraj Slafkovsky quote-unquote drama. Let's talk about that in detail in just a sec. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel and Game Time.
Hey NFL fans, you can start the season off big with a massive return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Whether you want to take your big swings on American football or maybe European football is more up your alley with the Champions League in the third match day lying just ahead, or maybe you're not a football fan in any capacity and you prefer tennis or golf, or I mean, hey, if you're listening to this podcast, maybe hockey is your sport of choice. Whatever you like as a sports fan, FanDuel has something to interest you. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com.
If you're looking to buy cheap tickets last minute to any event, Game Time is the best place to secure them. Game Time is safe, secure, incredibly easy to use, and they are absolutely obsessed with saving you money. They've got deals at every stop of the way. Flash deals, zone deals, last minute deals, and you also have the Game Time guarantee, which makes sure that you always get the best price for your tickets. If you find a ticket in the same section or row for less than what Game Time has to offer you, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And I use Game Time all the time personally. I mean, my schedule moves around a lot, so I can find myself with an afternoon free out of nowhere, and Game Time comes in clutch every time. You can even toggle all-in pricing in the app, and that shows you exactly what you're paying after fees, after taxes, so you can make the best decision for your wallet. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, super simple. You just create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. So download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Alrighty, so let's move on to our final segment here. We'll talk about some situation that happened recently with Juraj Slafkovsky. Now, some reports came out of Slovakia recently about Slafkovsky's kind of beef, quote unquote, with Slovakia hockey. to kind of summarize the situation, Slafkovsky criticized Slovak hockey, indicating kind of indirectly, kind of hinting at the fact that there's some corruption going on, a lot of nepotism and connections going on around Slovak hockey, which honestly, if we're all being truthful about it, is true for basically every single league at the professional level.
That's
right?
hockey.
That's just hockey.
Like Hockey
right?
Canada does that. Like they've trademarked that at this point.
Exactly. USA Hockey is also very much guilty of this. Like, this isn't an isolated scenario. But what I found really interesting is that Slafkovsky, at 20 years old, with the eyes of a nation on him, like we all know at this point how much pressure is on him as a Slovak, and the amount of respect and adulation that he's garnered over the years from Slovaks over in Slovakia, right? Like, him coming out about this is big. As a 20-year-old playing in the NHL, a former first overall pick who's playing really well right now, he didn't need to put himself in the limelight right now. But I respect that a lot from Slafkovsky. Calling out these things isn't easy. Most 20-year-olds never do. Most 30-year-olds never do.
30-year-olds don't.
A lot of people just accept this as a reality of hockey, right? But Slafkovsky didn't seem he takes offense to that, which I completely understand and respect. And then the result of that was Slovak hockey came out and denied the allegations and replied stating that Slafkovsky should be more careful about the things he says publicly, adding that he's too young to make such strong statements, which is condescending at best. Yeah, condescending at best and threatening at worst. What do you mean he should be careful about the things he says publicly? It's such a weird...
like a KHL team I'm familiar with at this point.
It sounds like a shakedown, but regardless, Slafkovsky responded to that saying, "You're just trying to hide behind the fact that I'm young, which is kind of crazy. Apparently, I wasn't nice to my teammates at the Olympics, which is kind of weird because a couple of guys on the team have texted me and said that they agree with me. Other people also write to me and thank me for what I said." He also added that I don't want to argue with them. They gave me a chance when I was 16 when he went to the to international tournaments with the men's team. However, I think that I paid it back with my performances, and I don't think that we should mix my opportunity in the national team with the problems of Slovak hockey. Now it's up to them. They know the truth. We all know it. It's just a matter of whether they face it or hide from it. How they approach me and how they look at me is their choice. I said what I said, but I still want to represent, play in the Olympics, and fight for something. However, that decision is no longer up to me, which I think from a 20-year-old is about the most mature thing I've heard this year, right? Like, I mean, again, 20-year-old hockey players, not necessarily erudites. It's not an insult to anybody. It's just a reality of things. You play at a higher level than anyone else. You're basically shoved into hockey your whole career. Education takes a background. This is a highly educated take that I just read to you guys. Yes, right?
Absolutely, it is. And also going back to that thing about like players on the Olympic team not liking Slafkovsky. Have you ever seen a teammate of Slafkovsky not like visibly adore him? Because I haven't. Like, he seems to be one of the most like beloved players to play with. That's like under 25 in hockey at the moment, and yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, it's an incredibly mature response, and like also just setting a very firm boundary of, okay, if you're not going to take me seriously or listen to me, that's up to you. I said what I said, and I would love to still take part for this country. I do not want to get ousted from this national team, even though I have gripes with the organization behind it. But yeah, it's your move now. Like, you can go and make some changes. You can address this like actually head on, rather than trying to silence like your nation's star player that is 20 years old and playing first line NHL minutes and was a first overall draft selection. That's up to you. They seemingly tried to strong arm him, and he's just like, no, obviously you can't do that to me. And he's right with this response. Like, if you respond this way, you're very clearly communicating you cannot strong arm me. Like, just don't even try.
Absolutely. Two things I want to add to that. First and foremost, if you're 20 years old and you're in a situation where a lot of people are listening to you, whether you have an audience on social media or whether you're a sports star like Slafkovsky is, there's no too young an age to talk about this stuff and denounce it. Actually, it's better the younger you do it. because you'll have taken a stance earlier in your career. You'll let people know where you stand, that you stand for fairness, that you stand for equity and equality, right? And that's, I think, the message of this thing is, when you have connections, when you have nepotism, when you have this kind of quote unquote corruption happening in sports, it makes it really tough for people who don't come from a hockey background to make it, right?
Yes.
And
it's very
Slafkovsky's
exclusionary.
Exactly. And the second thing is, if yes, you're 20 years old, but at the same time, the way I see it is some people, regardless of age, are scared of denouncing things that a group representing their nation does, whether that's a sports team or whatever it is. In this case, for example, if Hockey Canada, which it probably is involved in like connections and nepotism and the stuff that we know is everywhere in hockey, and Connor Bedard were to speak up about this, I understand the pushback of some people, on social media being like, well, he clearly doesn't like Canada and, all that stuff. There's a difference between, it's important to criticize the things we love. It's important to push back,
hold
on
them
the
accountable.
Yes, exactly. Because otherwise, it's not patriotism; it's blind nationalism, and that hurts everybody. Acting like your country's perfect and can do no wrong is actually what leads to so many problems. Whereas what Slafkovsky's doing, holding his country accountable for the actions that they do, I think is incredibly commendable and will make Slovak hockey better. It'll put pressure on the right people to improve the circumstances, right?
And it shows how much he loves it, right? Like he's putting himself in a bit of an uncomfortable position, and he's making a statement he doesn't have to be making because he loves his country's sport so much. He loves the Slovakian national team. He doesn't play hockey to be playing in for the Slovak hockey organization, right? He does it for the country itself, for the people, for the players, his teammates, the coaches, the staff, right? The connections and a human element and the love of it, not for the actual organization that umbrellas over the Slovakian national team. So holding that organization accountable in order to uphold the fairness of everything that falls beneath it, I think is really, really commendable, as you said.
Absolutely. And that wraps things up for today's show. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to stick around for the rest of our prospect coverage here as we finalize the month of October. This has been Hadi with Sebastian. Hi, and we hope you tune in next time.